Okay, so welcome, Ronia.
Hi,
Today,
thanks for having me.
yeah, you're welcome. So, Ronia Fraser is a multi-award-winning trauma recovery coach, a clinical hypnotherapist, author, and international speaker. She's a survivor of narcissistic abuse. Ronia pioneered a proven, structured model that helps survivors worldwide reclaim their mental health and purpose. Her compassionate, evidence-based approach transforms complex trauma into resilience, empowerment, and renewed self-belief for lasting change. This September, Ronia will be presenting at the ABH Hypnosis Conference. Her topic is titled Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Through Hypnosis. So thanks again, Ronia, for being here. And yeah, we're just going to jump into some questions. So
Sure.
what motivated your coaching focus on narcissistic abuse recovery?
Yeah, so it came out of personal experience. As you can imagine, it's such a very specific topic. You don't really end up in this kind of work unless it has happened to you. And like I wasn't even a coach before. It literally the niche found me, and then I basically took it from there. And yeah, it was really out of necessity. And I know from firsthand experience what a narcissistic abuse survivor goes through, and also the frustrations, when we're looking for help, because there isn't really anything available and not that much has changed. So I've been doing this for 8 years now, and a lot of the things are still the same. And I basically went on this mission to find something that could reverse the damage as effectively as it was caused, because I was not functioning anymore at all. As a result of what had happened to me, I was very much struggling with my mental health, and I couldn't work. I couldn't leave the house. I couldn't even go grocery shopping anymore. So it had like a really, really adverse impact on my life, quality of life, my agency. I just was not functioning at all. And I was going to therapy every single week and nothing ever changed. And that got me really frustrated. And the thing was that I knew that something had happened to me that turned me into that mess. So in my mind, there had to be something, if it goes one way, surely there has to be a way it goes the other way. And that's when I basically went out on this mission to find that something. And I didn't know what I was looking for at all. But that's where then NLP came into my life, coaching came into my life, hypnosis came into my life. And again, I didn't know what exactly I was looking for. And back then, like all of those modalities weren't really used for trauma the way it is now. But I guess I just did what I had to do, because I was looking for a solution. And then within 5 months, I was complex post-traumatic stress symptom free. And because I know from personal experience, and because I know it is, I basically, turned it into a very structured approach to help other survivors, but then also, to train coaches and therapists and medical professionals so they can help their clients better. It was pure necessity. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
how this whole thing happened. I was neither familiar with coaching, nor NLP, nor hypnosis, nor narcissistic abuse
okay.
until it happened.
Yeah, okay. So when you were finding these tools in NLP and hypnosis and, discovering more and more and putting all those pieces together, about the narcissistic abuse and like what you had been through, how do you think that whole journey influenced the way you then use those tools, that you take in NLP and hypnosis and now use them in a very particular way? So how did
Yeah,
that all come?
as I said, I didn't know what I was looking for. I knew I was really messed up, and I was basically at the end of my road, right?
Mm,
So what I then found with coaching and NLP, like first I found coaching, and with my coaching training came NLP. So the
mhm,
first thing was that it actually really helped me to shift my focus, because when something really bad happens to you, it's natural, to feel sorry for yourself, because none of it is fair. at all. So just coming to terms with that, you know, is incredibly hard. And that's also what keeps you kind of stuck in that victim mindset, because it's just so unfair, right? Because none of us deserve this in the first place. So the coaching helped me shift the focus very, very quickly. And that, of course, is incredibly vital, because we all know as long as somebody is in the victim mindset, no actual change work is happening, right? So that's where the coaching came in. And then through the coaching, I found NLP. And NLP, I remember when I did my practitioner, it was literally, it felt like somebody had taken off the top of my skull and started poking in my brain. That's literally how it felt. And you, of course, can make very quick changes very easily. And again, I had nothing in particular, like nobody in that was supporting me, particularly what I was dealing with, because back then it didn't mean anything. People weren't familiar with it at all. But I just, you know, I tried out everything I was given, and my unconscious mind did everything I needed to do. And what worked, you know, I put in my toolbox. And then through the NLP, I found the hypnosis. And hypnosis, of course, is what allows us to access the damage on this deep level that it was actually caused. Because we know by now, I think it's pretty common knowledge at this stage, that trauma recovery does not happen in the cognitive function, right? So the damage is caused much, much deeper. And especially narcissistic abuse is something that impacts us on every single level of our being, you know, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So of course we need the tools to access all of those different levels. And that combination just is very, very effective to create lasting and quick results.
Yeah. So you are obviously a passionate advocate for raising awareness as well around narcissistic abuse. So for those who are not, you know, involved in narcissistic abuse, how is this something that they would recognize, you know, for coaches and trainers in either their students or, you know, clients?
Yeah, this is actually a really important question. And I'm glad you asked that, because narcissistic abuse and narcissist and gaslighting and all those terms, the terminology has become such buzzwords, especially on social media, where it gets thrown around a lot. So what happens when somebody comes to us is possibly they don't even know, or they picked up terminology somewhere online and they're using it out of context. So as coaches and therapists, that's why it's important we actually need to know what we are really dealing with, to, you know, eliminate the people it doesn't even apply to, because not everybody is a narcissist, and not every relationship that breaks up was abusive just because somebody's heart hurts, you know. I mean, every breakup hurts, but a relationship with a narcissist is nothing like a normal relationship, and neither is the breakup. So when somebody comes to us for help, whether they think they have experienced narcissistic abuse or they don't even know, just certain ways it presents itself. Sorry, my microphone keeps changing. So if there's something with the sound, please let me know. And the thing is, at the end of the day, it's not about the narcissist at all, you know, because it's always, for one, easy to blame somebody else and accuse somebody else, or it's easy to find excuses for somebody else's behavior. So when somebody comes to us, what we really need to focus on is what is actually going on for them. Like I, for example, have a very detailed intake form that gives me all the answers before I even talk to somebody, you know. And like very typical things that will present in somebody who actually has experienced narcissistic abuse is, for example, the constant anxiety, as I already mentioned from my own experience, right? To the point where they're literally not functioning. They've lost all their agency. So they're not functioning in real life. And they have this sense of constantly walking on eggshells, right? So if somebody comes to us and tells us about an experience, whether that's a romantic partner or a parent or a coworker or a friend, it really doesn't matter. where they always feel like they walk on eggshells. That, for example, would be an indication. Or when somebody tells us something along the lines of, I don't know what's wrong with me, I feel like I'm losing my mind or I'm going crazy, that's an indication that gaslighting is at play, you know. So there are certain things that and I will be talking about this more in my talk as well. There are certain things that narcissistic abuse survivors will say, even if they don't have the language yet to express what has happened to them. I don't recognize myself looking, I don't recognize the person looking back in the mirror, or, you know, I don't know who I am anymore, for example. And another one is, I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like an addict. That's actually a very key one, because that indicates trauma bonding. And yeah, like things like that will present every time. And that's how we can then identify what it is that we're actually dealing with.
Yeah, okay. That's really helpful. Thank you. Like just understanding that on, for those who aren't really aware, and as you said, there's a lot of those jargon and those terms thrown around, but not really a deeper understanding of what they mean. So do you teach other coaches or have resources to support them to be able to assist survivors if this is something they come across in their coaching?
Yes, I do training. So I offer trainings for coaches, for therapists, for medical professionals, so they can help their clients better. And because it's become this thing, I mean, the help was always necessary, but now narcissistic abuse has become this thing. So obviously, people are much more aware of what it actually is. They are much more likely to go out there and ask for very specific help. You know, they will come to you with the problem of narcissistic abuse. And so I have various different training modules which I offer individually of each other, because not everybody who wants to work with complex trauma, for example, wants to work with narcissistic abuse. So I have very narcissistic abuse specific training. I have a trauma-informed hypnotherapy certification training. Then, of course, I teach my very particular approach, which allows us to facilitate recovery from complex trauma in a matter of 3 months. So it's literally like a step-by-step kind of process. And the thing is, what happens is it takes out the guesswork, because the very interesting thing about narcissistic abuse is, even though it's so complex and everybody has a story that's literally straight out of the movies, the tactics that are used by the abuser are all the same. The symptoms that we experience as survivors are all the same. And what I found in my work, and then obviously in my personal experience as well, is that the recovery also follows the same kind of motions, you know? And that's what actually allows us to be very tactical with the intervention, obviously, given that we have the right understanding and the right tools to facilitate that.
Yeah. So you touched on something there around trauma, like coaching. You actually do some training and being able to do like trauma coaching. So how is that different to, what you see out there in traditional, coaching trainings? What is
Yeah,
it?
I mean, trauma work, trauma informed, the label, right, is also like one of those buzzwords now. And I give whole lectures on that, actually,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
it's something that's very important to me, because a lot of practitioners, therapists, coaches have just added trauma informed to their offering now without actually having the in-depth understanding or training, or even less tools to give their clients to see them through the other side, right? And trauma informed doesn't mean having read about trauma or having watched like some YouTube clips or even having experienced trauma. That doesn't make you trauma informed. There's so much more to it. And it's very, very different working with a client who is traumatized and working with somebody that just comes to you for personal development, you know, because the way that their nervous system is at that particular point in time is very, very different. So when you work with highly traumatized people, they will have a highly activated nervous system, which means it's much more likely that you experience ab reactions, for example, in your session. So you have to be able to assess that, to be able to deal with that. You also have to be very clear on what it is that you work with and what not, because obviously mental health challenges present in various different ways, you know, and not every, like if somebody, for example, exhibits like schizophrenia, for example, or bipolar, that's something I would refer on because that's outside of my scope. And what's really important to understand is that working with trauma is not a walk in the park. It's an actual really advanced form of applying coaching and NLP and hypnosis. And even if the intention is good, the most important thing for anybody who wants to work in trauma really is that, for one, they do their own work, right? Because otherwise you just end up sitting there getting triggered yourself. And then obviously when we get triggered, when we get activated, we cannot hold space for somebody else, right? And then, you know, really gather the tools that are required, because trauma-informed work means we take somebody through the trauma, we get them out on the other side without actually re-traumatizing them. And that's where a lot of approaches at the moment fall short. So they may call themselves trauma informed, but because they lack the practical tools and very much reactivate the client, that's not the purpose of trauma informed.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that for us too. So, what do you hope that the attendees walk away with from your presentation at the Hypnosis Conference when it comes to healing trauma?
Well, I mean, first of all, a better understanding of what narcissistic abuse really is, because that's very important. So they will be able to identify it within their clients, maybe even within themselves, you know, because a lot of us, we go into this field because we want to sort ourselves out, right? There is something that we want to get to the bottom to. And so the awareness, first and foremost, to understand, to be able to categorize, to recognize it within the clients, within ourselves. So a better understanding of that. But then also I'm going to share a, you know, step-by-step approach, how we can then actually utilize hypnosis and NLP to facilitate the healing. So my intention is for everybody who's working or wants to work in that kind of field to have a bit of inspiration of how they can maybe use the tools that they already have or what they need to add to their toolbox to be able to do that. And for anybody who actually is dealing with the aftermath of narcissistic abuse, to also give them an idea and inspiration and, you know, also the understanding of what they can look out for and should look out for as they are looking for help. And of course, the hope that there's actually light at the end of the tunnel. It's not the end of the road.
Yeah, amazing. I think that for any coaches or trainers out there who are, you know, already or looking to work with any emotionally vulnerable clients, you know, or trauma, as you said, would definitely benefit from coming and seeing you speak at the Hypnosis Conference.
Absolutely.
And I know that you have so much more value to deliver to us. But thanks, Ronia, for making the time today and for sharing all of this.
Of course. Thanks for having me.